My husband and I host Thanksgiving every year, and every year when I am prepping for Thanksgiving Day, I wish that I had pre-prepped some things. So that is what we're going to do in today's video. Welcome to Harvest Moon Farm. My name is Mickey, and today we're going to continue on with our fall videos, I guess, our fall themed videos. Today we're going to go ahead and do some prep work for the holidays that are upcoming and some of the other fall meals that you might need. So first thing we're going to do is, and really the only thing we're going to do today, I've got these chicken carcasses that I've had in my freezer since we processed our last batch of meat chickens. So I'm just going to move this so I don't drop it. I am going to get these in my roasting pan, and I'm just going to start cooking these down. I'm just going to let them cook all day today, overnight, maybe. They seem to be frozen to my bag. And they are still frozen. I did just take them straight from the freezer, so. Oh my goodness. This could be a problem. So while this starts cooking down, I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit of water so that it doesn't stick to the bottom of my roasting pan. Tomorrow morning, after this is cooked all day, maybe tonight before I go to bed, I'm not sure. I've got a bag of, looks like carrots and onions. There might be some garlic in there. If there's not, I'm gonna throw some garlic in here, and we'll just let that continue cooking for about 24 hours or so. I could have sworn I had another bag, so I might go down to my freezer and see if I can find it. But I'm gonna turn this up to about 350. I'm just gonna put the lid on, and we're just gonna let that cook. And then tomorrow, we are going to finish this and make our stock and get it canned. We're also going to process some pie pumpkins and make some pumpkin puree so we can use that for our pumpkin pies and other pumpkin recipes during the holidays. I've got all those little onions that I harvested from my own garden that are so tiny, and I decided what I'm going to do with those is I'm just going to peel them and just chop them all and then just put them in baggies in the freezer. I'll just portion them out into 1 or 2 cup baggies and then put them in the freezer. And then I bought a box of onions from Azure Standard, so I've got those downstairs. I've got those down in my basement storage where it's nice and cool, so that I can use those throughout the fall and winter when I need, full size onions. Let's see, what else were we gonna do? Pumpkin, onion, oh yes. So the other thing that I wanna do is make some cream of celery soup. I use a lot of cream soups during the holidays, and I always say I'm gonna make my own, and then I wait till the last minute, and then I feel stressed about time and I don't want to take the time to make them from scratch, and I just buy a can of Campbell's or whatever from the grocery store. So this year I'm going to make them early so that I've got them to use. I think that's what we're going to do tomorrow. There might be something I'm leaving off the list, but I'm going to go look for that other bag of chicken, and then I'll be back tomorrow morning when we're ready to go ahead and start processing everything. Alrighty, we are ready to start cooking down our pumpkins so that we can make some pumpkin puree. So I'm going to go ahead and start preheating my oven to 375. I've got 2 baking sheets here, and I'm just going to put some parchment paper on. in half and put them on my baking sheets, and we're gonna roast them in the oven for about an hour. I'm gonna go ahead and use the spoon to dig out the seeds and the kind of the pulp in the middle. Whoa! Seeds flying everywhere. I had 7 little pie pumpkins, and I just finished going through. I cut them all in half, scooped all of the seeds and the pulp and, you know, all the extra stuff that was in the middle, and put all of that stuff in that little metal bowl that you can see there. And then I set all of the pumpkin halves on my parchment covered cookie trays, and then once I'm done, then I will go ahead and put those into the oven. Okay, those are all chopped and ready to go, and I just remembered I have this pot in here that I did not need preheated. That's okay. All right, I need to move this though. All right, so I'm going to put these in here. Like that. And then I'm just going to set these for an hour. And then we'll check them after an hour and just make sure they're cooked all the way. All right, so I'm gonna clean up some of this, and then I will go through these seeds later and clean them up and roast those because we like roasted pumpkin seeds. While those pumpkins are roasting, I'm gonna go ahead and start chopping up these onions. I've got my little compost bucket here so I can put the skins and the ends in. So I'm going to try and peel as much of the skin off as first before I cut into them. And I will still have to take some off, but if I can get them as clean as possible before I cut them, that's just less time for them to make me cry. So, alright, so I'm going to put these chopped onions in a glass bowl so that I don't want to use plastic because I don't want it to hold the smell of these onions. So I'm just going to use my little food chopper here. I'm just going to rough chop these. I don't want them to be, much. So I don't want to chop them too much, but ooh, they are already getting to me. So I'm going to cover this bowl while I'm working to help keep the fumes down. Oh, there's so many little tiny onions in here. Oh. So at some point, somebody had told me that if you put these in cold water, it helps. And it didn't help a lot, but it did help, so I'm going to try it. There's just, all these are so small. It's going to take me forever to get through them. So I'm through the onions with minimal prying. So now I'm going to go ahead and bag them up. And I think I'm going to do 2 cup measures. So I'm just putting the date, that it's onion, and that it's a 2 cup measure so that I know when I grab it how much is in here. So today is the first day of fall, September 23rd. So it's appropriate that we're working on fall items. I just thought about that. Okay, let me get a measuring cup. So my plan for these then is to use them in things like stuffing, or I make a broccoli rice casserole at Christmas or during the holidays, mac and cheese, any of those things that you need chopped onion. Then you've just already got it ready, and if you're like me and you have to cry every time you do it, it's a blessing to have it all done ahead of time, even though it's torture the day that you're doing it. And then I'm just going to put these flat, freeze them just like that, and then when I need to use them, I can just grab a bag or 2 or whatever out of my freezer and it'll be ready to go. So looks like I might get 4 and I might have a little bit left. All right, so I have just a little bit left here. So let's see, looks like about 1 cup. So I'll go ahead then and just do this one and just mark it that it's just 1 cup. Not wanting to cooperate. There we go. All right. So, other than the tiers, that was pretty easy. Okay. So I'll take these down to the freezer here in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and load my dishwasher up and wipe up all this onion so I can quit tearing up, and we'll move on to our stock. Alrighty, our pumpkin is done. So I'm going to turn the oven off, and I'm just going to take these out. And I'm going to be careful because there is liquid in these pumpkin halves. And we're just going to set them, oh my goodness, we're going to set them up here on our stove so that they can cool. And once they've cooled enough to be handled, then we'll go ahead and, so you can see this is very soft, we'll go ahead and pull the pumpkin rind off, and we'll dump our flesh into the blender so we can mix it all up. So first I'm going to use this and try and strain out all the chicken, the bones, and the veggies. So I'm going to kind of double strain it. So I've got this bowl for the meat, and I've got this for the broth. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there like that so it can do an additional little strain and get the last of the juice out. So we just want to preserve as much of that good broth out of there as we can. And then I'll probably strain it one more time after we have it down to mostly broth, just to get all the last little pieces out. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to dump it through that strainer very carefully to catch all these last little bits. And this is super hot, so I don't want to burn myself. So that caught all the little dark pieces, the last little bits of carrot and onion peel. So make sure I get this strained as much as possible and get all that delicious juice out of there. Okay, now I need to get my jars and get them hot so that we can fill them up. So I am going to use my electric pressure canner since I'm only going to have probably maybe 4 quarts. Alright, so I got 4 jars out and we'll just see how that goes. And I did already feel around the edges of my jars to make sure there were no nicks or anything. I hear a lot of people talking about checking it after it's full. To me that seems backwards. I always check it first because if you fill it up and then find a nick, then you have to empty it and start over. So I always check them first. We might only get 3 out of this. These are not quite to their head space, and I am just going to use a little bit of water and fill them up to their head space because this is pretty thick, rich. You can see how dark this is, so adding a little bit of water is not going to hurt anything. Okay, so as always, I'm going to use my 4 jars lids. These are brand new lids. And I forgot to show it, but I did wipe the rims of the jars with some vinegar before I put the lids on. And my rings, which it doesn't matter, new or old, because they are just going to hold this on until it's done. Okay, and every single time I have to look up how long these process. I think it's 70 minutes, but let me double check. Okay, I was wrong. It's 25 minutes. I don't know why I thought it was 70. That must be for meat. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to put our jars in here. I've got the appropriate amount of water already in my jar. I'm going to lock that down. So we do not want a boiling water can. We want a pressure can, and we want, whoops. Okay, we want a pressure can. It automatically defaults to 10 minutes. I'm going to turn it up to 25. I've already put my jars in. So now it's going to warm up. When it's ready for the next step, it will beep at me and I will hit the appropriate button. So I'm going to start getting this the rind off of this, now that it's cool enough for me to touch, I can just pull it off like that. And I need another bowl. So I'm gonna put the rind in a bowl for the chickens, and then I'll put the pulp in here, and we will process that once we get it all out. So all I'm gonna do is just, it peels off really nice once it's been roasted like that. And now that we can touch it, if you can stand it, it's actually a little bit easier to do when it's still pretty hot. And in the past, I have done it while it's really hot. But since I was working on the chicken stock, I didn't get it done. That's okay, because this is way easier on your fingertips than doing it when it's blistering hot. And I was so hoping that this year when I did my pumpkin, it would be from pumpkins that came out of my own garden. But you guys know that didn't happen this year, so next year we can just keep hoping. All right, here's the first pan. So I think I had 7 little pie pumpkins. So we'll see how much this makes. Here's our bowl of rind that I'm going to take to the chickens. Here's our bowl of pumpkin pulp. So I'm going to run that through the blender, and then I'm going to measure it into some baggies. And I'm going to do 2 cup measurements again. Oh, I put those bags away. So again, I'm just going to date these bags and put what they are and how much it is. So I'm going to go ahead and make up several of these bags so that they're ready when I get ready to start running this through the blender. So I've got 5 of these here, and I don't know how much I'm going to need. We'll just see how it goes. And I'll have to see how this looks after I blend it all up, because if it's got too much moisture in it, I might let it strain a little bit through a cloth to get rid of the excess moisture. Although this actually doesn't look super moist. I think because I let it cool more, a lot of that liquid evaporated, which is actually a good thing. Got this in my blender, and we are going to give it a whirl. There's our first batch. So really all you're looking to do is just blend this into a nice soft mixture. And then we're gonna use our measuring cup. Oh, I don't know what that is. We're gonna use our measuring cup and measure out 2 cups into each of our bags. Probably should get out my little bag holders. That would probably help. We'll go ahead and put some of these bags in here like this and see if this helps me not be quite so messy. And just like everything else, we're going to squeeze the air out. We're going to put this flat. I'm going to get one of my smaller cookie trays. And we're just gonna lay these bags of puree on this tray, and then we'll take them to the freezer once I've got them all done and let them let them freeze flat. Let them freeze. Just about to the end of this. So I'll get those 2 bags, I'll make up 2 more, and then we'll see what we've got left if I need to make up 1 more. So for those of you who don't know, the reason that we are freezing our pumpkin puree is that there are no safe home canning recipes for a puree like this. So even a pressure canner, a home pressure canner, does not get hot enough to safely can that. We can't make sure that the heat is getting through the entire batch because it is so thick. So you always want to freeze. If you are making a big batch, you always want to freeze this and not try to can it. We ended up with 7 2-cup portions. And this last bag, I am going to not measure what I put in it, but I'm going to mark it to use for my pumpkin rolls because those only use 1/4 of a cup? No, 2/3 of a cup, something like that. Anyway, I'll just put it in there, and then when I thaw this, I'll make sure this one's marked for my pumpkin rolls. Got that marked? I don't know why I closed that, like a ding-a-ling. And then I'll just pour this in out of my blender. This might actually be about 2 cups, but that's okay. It smells really good. It doesn't smell, you know, it doesn't smell like a pumpkin pie or something like that, of course, because it doesn't have any of the seasonings in it, but it just smells so clean and fresh and delicious. And knowing all the yummy, amazing things we can do with it makes it totally worth it. It tastes so much better than what you buy in the store. Yeah, so this might be maybe 2.5 cups. That's okay, we'll have it marked without a measurement. Oh yeah, this is a little more than 2. Ugh, messy. There we go. So I've got these 8 bags, which I will go put in my basement freezer, let them freeze flat, and then I can maneuver them around my freezers a lot easier. So we're gonna clean some of this mess up. The kitchen started the day so clean, but that's what happens, and it is perfectly fine. Get all the pumpkin off my blender. Or off the blender base, I guess I should say. The actual blender bowl is in the dishwasher now. We've got 15 minutes of processing time left on the canner, and then we will wait for it to come back down to pressure on its own. Once it's done, we'll open it, let it cool about 5 minutes or so, then we'll take the jars out and set them on a towel. I'm going to go ahead and use one of these little stretchy covers to cover this bowl of pulp and seeds. Hopefully I can get this to work. And then I'm going to put it in the fridge in case, this might not be big enough for this bowl, It's not for this bowl. Or what color? Oh yeah. There we go. That'll fit. Okay, so I've got this covered. I'm gonna stick it in the fridge in case I don't get to these seeds today. I don't want them to sit out open all night. Into the fridge it goes, and if I don't get to it tonight, then I'll get it done tomorrow. While the chicken stock finishes processing, we're on our last recipe now. So we are going to make a celery cream soup, a condensed soup like you'd buy at Campbell's or whatever. We're gonna make one of those. You can make, of course, all kinds of different cream soups. I typically just use the cream of celery. I don't really like mushrooms, so I mean, I've used the cream of mushroom, it doesn't bother me, but I like the cream of celery better. So I am going to triple the recipe that I have here because I want to be able to have plenty for the holidays. To start off with, we need 1.5 cups of butter, which that is 3 sticks. We're going to put that in our pot. We're going to start melting that down. We're going to let this butter melt, and once it's melted, we are going to add in 18 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. I'm going to go ahead and measure that out into a bowl so that it's ready for me to just pour in. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to see how much 18 tablespoons is in cups. So that is 1 1/8 cup. So I'm going to measure it like that rather than measure out all those tablespoons. So this is a 1/2 cup measure here. The butter is almost melted. And once it's melted, we're going to go ahead and whisk in our flour. Okay, now that we've got our flour stirred in, we're going to add 3 cups of chicken stock. We're going to whisk that in. And we're going to add 3 cups of, the recipe calls for either milk or half and half. I think I have 2 cups of half and half. And so I'll just do the rest with just regular milk. And then we want to whisk that for about 1 to 2 minutes. Since I have so much, I am going to do 2, since my pot is so full. I'm going to add in 3 teaspoons of salt. One and a half teaspoons of pepper. One and a half teaspoons of onion powder. And 1.5 teaspoons of garlic powder. And we're going to whisk all this together. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Now we're gonna let that come up to a simmer, and we're gonna let it cook about 3 to 5 minutes or until it starts to thicken up. While that's cooking, we're gonna go ahead and take care of our celery. We're gonna add 1.5 cups of our chopped celery to a skillet. Mine's kind of frozen in chunks, so I'm kind of fighting with it a little bit. And we're just gonna let that saute. I'm gonna add just a little bit of spray in here so it doesn't stick. This is starting to thicken up a little bit, but we want to keep whisking it so that it doesn't clump up at the bottom. I am going to give this a taste and make sure that the seasonings are right. It's good. So that was really good. Go ahead and just stir our celery up a little bit. Of course, it was frozen for one thing, and you know celery has a ton of water in it. So I'm just gonna let this keep sauteing here. So we're gonna let this cook until the water is cooked out of it, and then we're gonna add it to our base. So the water is basically gone. So now we're going to go ahead and stir this into our base. Just like that. Alright, so that is nice and thick. Smells good. It tastes delicious. So what we want to do now is let this cool. So I'm going to move this off the warm burner. So we're going to let this cool completely, and once it's cool, we will package it up and put it in the freezer. Again, because this uses dairy and it's very thick, you cannot can it. There's no home canning recipe that is safe for dairy or for something that's this thick. So we're going to put it in probably in jars and freeze it, but we want to wait until it is completely cool before we do anything else with it.
We've got some company right now. My husband's friend is there with his 2 small kids, so it's a little bit loud in the house, so I'm just going to voice over this. So our soup has cooled down, and I am using half-pint jars, and I'm filling them to maybe 1.25 inches or 1.5 inches head space, because I want to leave room so that when this freezes, that it's not over full where there's danger of breaking my jar in the freezer. So I'm just loading all of these up. I've washed these jars and gotten it, made sure that they were the same temperature as the soup. I'm going to fill these all up, and then I'm going to put a lid on them, and we'll store them in the freezer. There's the kids. They're super excited. I will take those down to my freezer and just store them there. And then when I'm ready to use them for the holidays, I'll just get out however many jars I need and let them thaw in the fridge until I'm ready to use them. So just like all kids, Maya wanted to help me out there in the kitchen. So she's helping me put the lids and rings on all of the jars. That one's kind of fighting her. But she was a big help, and she was happy about it.
Our pressure canner is done, and it's released the pressure, and it's been sitting. So now I'm going to go ahead and get these jars out. I'm going to set them here, and then I'll just let them cool overnight. Ooh, look how pretty that color is. We'll let them cool overnight, and then once they're cooled, and I'm sure that they look like they're sealed now, but once I'm sure that they're good after about 18 hours or so, I'll go ahead and take my rings off, mark the tops of them, and put them with my food storage downstairs. So I got 11 11 little half-pint jars, which I did not fill them all the way up. I left about, it's probably a little over an inch space because they are going in the freezer once they're almost cool. They're going in the freezer because, like I said, I can't can them and they won't last in my fridge. So I'm going to put them in my freezer. That's why I wanted to make sure I left some headspace for them so that it can expand as it freezes and it won't break my jars or try and push out the top. We got 8 bags of pumpkin puree and I got all my onions chopped up and portioned out into bags in the freezer. So I will be really glad that I took the time to do this come Thanksgiving when I'm ready to start prepping for Thanksgiving dinner, because I'll have all these items on hand, easy to use and ready to go as ingredients in the bigger, recipe. So I just want to thank you guys for watching this video and hanging out with me in my kitchen today. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and then you'll always know when my next video is available for you to watch and enjoy. If you're not already subscribed to my newsletter, there's a link down below in the description box. It's at the very top. If you click that, it'll take you. You can sign up for my newsletter. It's a once-a-week email. It comes out on Mondays. And it just gives you a little bit more information about my family and our farm and our animals and what kinds of things we're doing, what kinds of things we're thinking about for the future. Just a little more inside information. You can unsubscribe at any time. But again, I just want to say thank you, and I will see you guys on the next video.